Gather round the fire, friends. I've got a crazy tale to tell you about a series of mysterious Wild West murders back in the 1920s. It all started one day in 1921 when a teenage boy was out squirrel hunting with his dad and friend near a creek in the small town of Fairfax, Oklahoma. Now, this was no ordinary small town. This was a place where cowboys and outlaws still roamed, and people settled scores with pistols and Winchester rifles. Real Wild West stuff. This kid runs ahead and shoots a squirrel, chasing it down a wooded slope. That's when his dad and a friend hear him scream. They rush over to find the boy standing paralyzed over the grossly decomposed body of a Native American woman. Her swollen skin was splitting open, and her skull was exposed where animals had chewed off part of her face. The two men bring the body back to town to the undertaker, who wonders if it might be an Osage woman named Anna Brown, who was known to party hard and had gone missing over a week ago. With most of her face missing, he couldn't tell, so he calls Anna's sister Molly to identify the body. And sure enough, Molly takes one look at the clothes and breaks down crying. She recognized her sister's dress because she had just washed it for her before she disappeared. Molly had just lost her other sister, Minnie, to some mystery wasting sickness not long ago. Now Anna too? This was too much. So, who were these Osage folk, and why would anyone want them dead? Well, here's where things get interesting. The Osage were a Native American tribe who had once been driven off their ancestral lands in Kansas back in the 1870s. But they had the smarts to buy up what was considered worthless rocky scrubland in Oklahoma instead. Lo and behold, soon they discovered this barren land was floating on a massive underground ocean of oil. We're talking mind-boggling sums of money beyond imagination. By the 20s, the Osage were easily the richest people on the planet per capita. That made some folks mighty jealous. I mean, stinking rich Indians throwing their money around, driving fancy cars. Let's just say plenty of people thought something ought to be done about that. And poor dead Anna? The undertaker checks her head, exposing a bullet wound. Yep, clear case of murder. Molly hopes they catch the killer soon, especially with the help of her dear friend, King of the Osage Hills, William Hale. Old Bill Hale was a white man who had risen from poor wandering cowpoke to wealthy cattle rancher. He acts all friendly with the tribe, even loaning them money and paying medical bills. With Bill vowing to catch the killer, Molly feels hopeful, until a few months later, when her sickly mama dies from more wasting sickness, and her sister Rita's husband starts saying maybe she was poisoned. Bill's thinking the deaths might be about snatching up those precious Osage oil fortunes. Here's how the Osage got so rich. Back in 1906, their chief was smart enough to keep mineral rights for the tribe, meaning they owned the rights to any oil under their land, and he got the US government to agree every single Osage member would get an equal share of profits. By the 1920s, we're talking over $30 million a year, split between fewer than 2,000 tribe members. And these mineral rights and oil profits legally could only pass down from one generation to the next. You couldn't sell them or transfer them. They followed strict inheritance lines. Are you getting a sense of why some slimy folks might decide murdering Osage to get at their fortunes is a clever idea? As more money-hungry white guardians found ways to swindle tribe members, and corporations schemed to trick them into selling, something much more sinister took root. I'll give you a quick rundown of some of the deaths. First, Anna, shot in the back of the head. Then, Mama Lizzie dies of wasting sickness. So does a young man named William Stepson. Another Osage woman also drops dead of suspected poisoning. Rita's the next sister, murdered when the house she shares with husband Bill blows sky high in a massive explosion. Bill somehow survives the blast, but dies weeks later in the hospital. And on it goes. Blown up cars with bodies inside. An Osage attorney thrown off a moving train. Shot between the eyes, bashed in skulls, vanished without a trace. By this point, the Osage are straight up terrified. They're hanging light bulbs outside their houses, keeping guard dogs, begging for help. They just know somebody is determined to wipe them out completely. You'd think dozens of unsolved murders would get the law and the newspapers interested. But nope, these were Indians after all. The killer, or more likely killers, felt untouchable until one man decided enough was enough. Back east in Washington, D.C., the Bureau of Investigation had a new young boss, J. Edgar Hoover, and he wanted better cases to build up this little backwater agency he had inherited. So, in 1925, he calls in this old grizzled Wild West lawman turned special agent, Tom White, sends him out to Oklahoma and tells him, "You better solve these murders, no excuses." Now, Tom White is a real cowboy's cowboy. Huge mustache, tall as can be, wears that Stetson hat and packs that Winchester rifle and six-shooter, just like when he used to track outlaws on horseback. The kind of lawman you could only find out there on the plains. White can tell these crimes have been going on far too long. What's crazy is nobody even interviewed the last surviving sister, Molly. So he pays her a visit. White gets her away from these two sketchy doctors who had been treating the family, gets her hospitalized instead. Suddenly, she starts recovering from her sickness. Those family doctors reeked of foul play. Bit by bit, White and his team uncovered all the dirty secrets hiding behind the respectable facade of the Wild West Empire. The insurance scams, the backroom bombshells, forbidden affairs, bought witnesses. And William Hale, king of the Osage Hills, is at the center of it all. Remember him? Pretending to help Molly catch her sister's killer? Had everyone fooled. Upright citizen and friend of the Osage, but man did he have a devious plan. His nephew Ernst married Molly for her oil money. They conspired to bump off her entire family one by one until everything was inherited by his dear wife Molly. And good old Uncle Bill just happened to control the purse strings. It was almost the perfect crime, except they didn't count on cowboy cop Tom White sniffing them out. He had to flip witnesses, follow money trails like a bloodhound, back witnesses into corners until they cracked. But finally, he had enough evidence to arrest Kingpin Hale and his gang. Things were looking good. Cowboys riding in to save the day and catch the villains terrorizing the town. But here's the kick in the pants. Even after White busted the case wide open, people kept dying. Osage were still living scared. There were just too many greed heads who wanted their cut. Killing Indians to steal their oil fortunes had become the ultimate hustle. Records show murders where Osage were killed specifically to acquire their mineral rights and oil fortune for a number of years, even after Hale and his main gang were arrested and convicted. However, many of these later copycat cases went unsolved and the related deaths uncounted. It seems that although White's investigation revealed one major murderous plot and conspiracy, the allure of illicit oil wealth sadly seduced other greedy individuals down a similarly violent path as well. As for the fate of our main killers, William Hale, considered the mastermind, only ended up serving about 20 years before being paroled. He lived until 1962. His nephew Ernest served a bit longer, but was also paroled after decades behind bars, though he was later arrested again for robbery. Molly did eventually remarry and continued living in the Osage community. However, she sadly passed away in her early 50s in 1937. The official death toll of the Osage Reign of Terror was 24, but historians believe many more Osage were likely killed in those years by various scheming opportunists looking to obtain rights to the tribe's oil fortune. Some murders were never solved or even documented.